Doo-doo-dee. It's Nandi!
Hello friends, apologies for the long break, but I've enjoyed the time off with Mrs. Nandi following our wedding last week, and it was really nice reading all of your kind messages. Today we're back to Tacticus and we're covering the latest patch that has arrived. Some of you will already have it, while others may have to wait for a few days. I wanted to go over the major talking points, share my thoughts, and also highlight the newest character, the legendary Ahriman, who completes the Thousand Suns ensemble. I like to keep my videos short and sweet, so here is the outline. I'll talk about Diamond 2, how that is expected to change the game meta, give you timings for upcoming events and character releases, and then take a deeper dive into Ahriman, who I think has potential to rival Eldryon as one of the most powerful characters in the game. Ahriman has a really complex passive to understand, so make sure you check that bit out where I break it all down as simply as I can. I'll also have my refer a friend code, which you can use to enter yourself 100 Blackstone. Everything is timestamped and chapter marked for you to skip ahead as needed. Diamond 2 is the latest gear cap to come to Tacticus. Characters need to be a minimum of level 47 in order to reach this gear cap. What the numbers show us, and I have to thank Tauan for this, for running the numbers so quickly, is that the difference between Diamond 1 and Diamond 2 is a stat increase of between 24 and 25% of a character's base stats. The obvious winners here are stat-based characters, those that do massive amounts of damage or have impressive health or armor values. Tauan has a great spreadsheet that allows you to filter by damage numbers and easily see the changes between Diamond 1 and Diamond 2. Characters like Tiark and Thaddeus are early big winners, while on the other hand, those that depend on abilities and summons lose ground, relatively speaking. There's also a new guild boss coming to Tacticus, who arrives in time for the September 27 guild raid season. We get another Tyranid boss, the Screamer Killer. I'll be doing one of my customary deep dives on this when the time comes, so stay tuned to the channel. Those of you that play Warhammer on the tabletop or have access to Google might be able to do some pre-reading and research as to what this boss might do. We also have a slew of events coming this patch. We have a new playable Tyranid, the Tyrant Guard character, who arrives to the game on September 24th via the 2-week hero release event. The next Battle Pass starts on September 17th and features Darkstrider as the new character. Continuing on the theme of excellent Tau, Shadowsun starts her legendary release event on October 15th. If you haven't done so already, check out the Shadowsun Unlock guide on my channel to give yourself a head start on the event. There are also 2 character quest events this patch. The first of those is Sybil, that runs from 3 days between September 20th and the 22nd, and the second is Toth, who runs between October 4th and October 6th. This patch also brings a couple of changes to the Onslaught game mode. Now, the chest that you get for leveling up only gives you epic or legendary rewards after a certain level, which filters out the sort of less useful, uncommon and rare stuff. The honor system has also changed for when you honor a white winged star character. Previously you would get 10 to 12 shards of a random character, now that has reduced to 6 to 7 shards, but instead of getting a random character, you'll always get the honored character. Therefore, if you want to farm Archaeotech, this is a guaranteed way of getting some each time you play Onslaught. Let's talk about the item that has now changed, the nanocrystalline plating. This is an armor item that can be used by the Necron and Tau factions and has had its functionality changed to provide health at the expense of slight armor reduction. Functionally, this is a huge buff to the Necrons due to their faction ability Living Metal that heals them 10% of their maximum hit points. Let's move on to talk about the character Ahriman, who's just arrived. Ahriman is a legendary Thousand Suns character who is available via the same Han campaign. Let's start with the character overview. Now I start all of these character showcases with a nod to the art department, who always seem to do a fantastic job with the character models and animations, and Ahriman is no different. He looks super cool. In terms of traits, we can see that Ahriman has 3. Weaver of Fates, which is the Thousand Suns faction trait, Flying and Psyker. You'll see his stats on screen scaled to Diamond 2, which is the new maximum standard for the game. He does a flame melee attack and a psychic ranged attack, both with 1 hit. His items are pictured on screen with a critical hit booster as his 3rd slot. For his active ability we have Doombolt, which does 3 hits of psychic damage, all with 100% pierce. distributing itself amongst targets within 2 hexes. There are bonus hits provided for each hex on the battlefield that is currently on fire, and if you defeat an enemy with Ahriman's ranged attack, Doombolt resets. Ahriman's passive is what makes him incredibly powerful, and we'll spend some time looking at it. Essentially, what it checks for is that the enemy is on a hex on fire. If you attack an enemy who's on fire and do flame or psychic damage, you can increase your damage by 50%, up to a maximum of almost 5,500 per hit at level 50. Those values are astronomically strong, and Ahriman's passive also happens to allow him to set a hex on fire. Next, we can take a look at Ahriman's active ability, Doombolt. Here we can see Doombolt applying itself equally to 3 targets within 2 hexes. What I want to demonstrate here is how on Ahriman's subsequent turn he recharges his Doombolt by killing an enemy guardsman. When the turn cycles back to Ahriman, you can see that Doombolt is usable once again, and that's because of this last line of text that allows him to reset it on kill. Now when he reuses it, because there's only 1 target in range, it takes all 3 hits. This clip takes a look at Ahriman's passive in action, Psychic Stock. So I've chosen 3 characters that do flame damage to help illustrate how it works. Rayvas has a melee flame attack, and you can see that when we move her adjacent to Bellator, she does roughly 400 damage. However, once we set the hex on fire with Vindicta, we can have a look and go back to Rayvas and see how that damage increases to 478. This clip demonstrates the fact that the flame effect is applied at the end of an attack. Pre-flame, Ahriman does about 3,400 damage, however after Rayvas sets the hex on fire, that increases to 5,100, and that again just demonstrates that the flame effect is applied at the end of the action, whether that's an attack ability or an active ability. Here is the summary infographic for Ahriman. I'll post this to the Pants of Horus Discord as well as to the Tacticus wiki, both of which will be linked in the video description. Given that we are now at Diamond 2, raw stats matter more than ever, and we can take a look at how Ahriman measures up, courtesy of Tawan and his work. Here you can see a stats radar which looks at Ahriman's stats as a centile and sees how he ranks against others in the game. He has a pretty average health and armor stat at the 54th and 48th percentile, respectively. His PvP range damage is impressive, but falls away against endgame boss armor. What makes Ahriman really good, however, is his passive. You saw earlier that Ahriman can potentially increase his damage by 50%, up to a maximum of almost 5.5k at level 50, and this is a bonus per hit. Compare that to Eldryon, who is currently the gold standard sort of king of guild raids, and Eldryon's damage buff is only 900 per hit. So there's massive potential, however, clearly in order to achieve that you need to jump through quite a lot of hoops, and that only applies to both psychic and flame damage. So speaking of those 2 damage types, I've taken the liberty of creating 2 slides that show you the current characters in the game who deal flame and psychic damage in order for you and your guilds to start some theory crafting and discussions. This next slide is really important because it breaks down Ahriman's passive. In order to understand how this works, we need to take a look at a concept called the damage ladder. I touched on this in a previous video and have a deeper and better understanding following discussion with the developers. As I understand it, some aspects of this ladder had to change in order to accommodate the new mechanics introduced by Ahriman. When damage is calculated, we start with a character's raw damage value, which you can see on their character screen, and then add any critical hit damage or ability buffs to this value. Ahriman's passive introduces a new type of damage called capped damage. This is calculated by adding all of the previous damage together and then applying the said capped damage buff. In this case, that is at 50% at level 50, with a maximum damage of 5.5k per hit. All of these numbers are then bundled together for a damage value, and this damage value is used to work our way down the damage ladder as seen here on the right side of the screen. We use this number to apply pierce and armor checks, and then we add final modifiers like Roswitha's active, marker light, etc. before coming to check for block and checking for final damage. Now, I've whizzed through that and it's a complex concept, but I've done so because there is a separate video on my channel that looks at this in quite a lot of detail. So if this is the kind of stuff you're interested in, I encourage you to check it out. That's all I've got for today. Bit of a whiz through the patch, but hopefully useful nonetheless. If you haven't done so yet, you can enter the code on screen to earn yourself 100 Blackstone and also support me and the work that I do. It only works once, so choose carefully in terms of who you support. Thank you to everyone that has already done so. As a final plea, if you haven't done so already, feel free to subscribe to me as well. Once I get to 5,000 subs, I'll be able to generate a code to provide everyone in the game with some freebies. That's all for now. Thanks folks, bye.
Doo-doo-dee. It's Nandi.